pleasure of welcoming our guest speaker to the lower school this morning. Dr. Williams is not only an accomplished surgeon, urologic surgeon in the medical field, but she is also an author of the children's book series, the Dr. D.D. Dynamo book series. And I don't want to say too much because I know Dr. Williams has words of inspiration to share with all of you this morning, but I was thinking a lot about your visit today and the power of possibility and positivity. And Dr. Williams is going to share with all of us today about how you can find inspiration in being positive, how you can find inspiration in focusing your energy, your efforts on your goals and passions, and how in life there are limitless opportunities ahead of you, okay? So I want you all to sit back, relax, be a wonderful audience, and really take in the words and the journey of Dr. Williams. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
I would like to thank, before I get started, my husband, who is my #1 cheerleader, and is here with me today to make sure that everything goes well technically. I am, the things that I love, the reason that I love speaking to young people is because it really allows me to bring, all of whom I am to bear in the words that I share with you. And I wear multiple hats. Not only am I a surgeon, an author, a mom, a wife, a friend, a daughter, a healer, a teacher, but I am also a storyteller. How many people like to hear stories? All of you, fantastic. How many of you like to tell stories? How many of you like to write stories? Fantastic, you guys are awesome. So here's the interesting thing, and I heard this as I was even listening to one of the tours that was happening this morning as the drama teacher was describing this integrated approach that is offered here. When you do dramas, the curriculum is tied into whatever the show is that you're doing, whatever play is being produced, and I know you guys have a production coming up next week, but there's an attempt that's made to integrate that into the curriculum, integrate that into what you're learning. And even though I wear multiple hats, those are not separate parts of myself. They are all integrated into a part of who I am. So I am all of those things all woven together. To the extent that I think about storytelling and the importance of storytelling. And storytelling is one of those things that connects us not only to ourselves, but to others. And I think of stories as kind of like thread. And threads that weave together to form a fabric that is textured, a fabric that is rich, a fabric that can be used to make so many different things. And as I think about storytelling and that fabric and how that is interwoven into all and every part of your life, I think about the uniqueness of each and every one of our stories. So each of us has a bunch of stories that are woven together into the fabric of our life that is uniquely us, that is uniquely special, that we are uniquely designed to use those stories to touch the world, to change the world. And I want to share with you today some of my thoughts about how do you embrace that uniqueness of who you are? How do you unapologetically connect to the very, very valuable uniqueness of you? And how do you take that journey from you to your unlimited? Recognizing that our unlimited lives on the inside, the same way that you live on the inside. And if you bring your unlimited into the inside of who you are, it means that when you think about unlimited, unlimited means not restricted by quantity or content. And so when I think about the unlimited living on the inside of who we are, I think first of our hearts. And our hearts with this unlimited capacity to love. Our hearts and our attitudes where we have a choice, an unlimited choice, to choose our attitudes and to choose how we respond. And then I think about our minds and the unlimited capacity of our minds to think, to dream, and to believe. And because I'm a storyteller, one of the things that I want to bring you on the journey with me, and it's going to be a quick journey. This is going to be the 100-meter sprint, because if you think about your life as a fabric, my life is bolts and bolts and bolts of fabrics from all of the stories that I've acquired over the years, as will you. As you get older, you'll collect so many more stories. So I'm going to share a part of myself and a part of my story to tell you how I got from where you are to where I am today, and what are the things that have contributed to my belief that this journey to you is a journey to unlimited through what I call these 5 habits of positivity. Now, I was born in Guyana, South America. Yeah, all right, in the house, awesome. And I have a twin brother, and his name is Hubert. And Hubert and I, twins, we did everything together. My parents, we went to school, elementary school together. We always went, we had the same friends, we did the same activities together. We literally were twins. Any twins in the audience? Oh my gosh, yeah, so you guys know what I'm talking about. Cool. And then, the other thing that's interesting, the other thing about twins, and it's not just twins, but even siblings, I don't know if you guys do this, but when my brother and I got anything, let's say we were gonna share a can of Coke, and our parents were throwing the Coke into the glasses. We'd always measure. Do you guys do that? Where you put your glasses side by side to make sure that you're getting the exact same amount. You want to make sure you're not getting gypped. Do you guys do that? Well, my brother and I did that all the time. So when we were about 10, 11, not much older than you guys, my parents and our family moved from Guyana to Barbados. Any Barbados contacts? Oh, wonderful, another Caribbean country. And this is an island in the Caribbean, Barbados. And when we got to Barbados, one of the things that happened with my brother and myself is that we then got separated and we went to 2 different schools. I went to an all-girls school and my brother went to an all-boys school. And it was probably my first month at this all-girls school. And it's probably around, have you guys eaten lunch yet, or is lunch coming after this? After this, okay. So you were in the recesses after this. So you were in the same situation that I was in that class that morning at the all-girls school where my stomach was growling. I was starved. I was kind of wondering, when is this going to be over? And the bell rang and everyone was scrambling to get up to get to lunch. And in the scramble, one of the students in the class, one of the girls in the class, pulled her earring out. I know, blood everywhere. It was a bloodbath. It really wasn't. But she was bleeding. But everyone else was kind of rushing to try to get out to lunch. Plus, people were not really feeling the sight of blood. And I, almost in slow motion, was kind of running towards her to help her. And it was in that moment that I came into the realization of one of my whys. Like, why am I here? I realized I wanted to be able to help people. So, here I am at this all-girls school, and I figured I want to be a doctor because that's one of the ways that I can help people. And what I came to discover at the all-girls school was that I needed to have physics to be able to become a doctor. It's one of the requirements. And I was on, let's kind of pretend like there's a girls' bus and a boys' bus. And I was on the girls' bus. There's my little pointer. there it is. Okay. So I was on this all-girls bus, and the girls' bus did not offer physics. And then my brother was on the all-boys bus, and he got to take physics. So immediately, remember the whole Coke story about we were trying to get the same thing? So my first question is, why is it that at age 11, my brother is having an opportunity that I don't have? So that didn't leave me feeling really good about myself. So, let me back up for a little bit. One of the things about the girls' bus, so the girls' bus stops, if you think about this bus, they were stopping at a librarian, teacher, cook, mother, secretary, homemaker, store clerk, manager, nurse. And there's nothing wrong with any of these occupations or pursuits. But the boys' bus had a wider array of options. So they could have been a teacher, a chef, a father, an engineer, a doctor, a physicist, astronaut, pharmacist, mathematician. So the boys had a wider range of stops than the girls did. So I'm perplexed. I'm a little bit just discontented. I'm really upset that here is something that I'm being told that I don't have access to, that my brother has access to. It seems like the only reason that I don't have access to it is because I'm a girl. So what did I do? Well, I kind of, cried to my parents. I complained for a while. And then what I realized is that I had a choice. I could either continue to complain about it and bellyache and be mad that my brother was doing something that I didn't get a chance to do, or I could raise my hand. And so I raised my hand on the bus. Everyone else was pretty happy on the bus. I raised my hand and I said, this bus is going to a place where I don't have access to. I need to get on the bus that's stopping at the stop that I want to get off on. So, now, just a little sidebar. Women who had graduated from the all-girls school, some of them had gone off to do some of the things that were on the boys' school bus. So they had gone off to be doctors and gone off to be engineers. But what happened with those women is, look at this. So here are the boys on the bus. You see that bus is zooming. They're getting ready to get to their stops, and it's going to take them, let's say, 5 years to get to their destination. And then here's the girl. She's on the bike. And do you think if you ride a bike, you can keep up with the bus? No, it's going to take, the bus goes a whole lot faster, and it takes a whole lot longer. So she eventually would make it to the destination, but she's at a significant disadvantage. It just takes so much longer. And I decided, I don't want to ride a bike. I want to be on a bus with the boys. So consequently, I got off of that girls' bus, and here are the teachers and my parents. And what is really amazing about these group of folks here is they were actually happy for me, because no one had ever raised their hand and said, I don't want to be on this bus. I want to go to the other bus to get off of the other stops. No one had actually ever raised their hand. And so it was not as if that they were deliberately saying we are going to actively and intentionally prevent the girls from getting on the other bus, because no one had ever asked. They never knew what was possible. And so one of the very important lessons in this is that sometimes if there are things that have been done the same way over and over and over again, and you want to do it differently, I encourage you to raise your hand, because many times, sometimes no one had ever thought about doing it differently. And so you bring a new voice, you bring a new perspective, you bring a new set of opportunities for the people coming behind you, because you have the courage to just speak up and raise your hand. So off I went onto the bus, and what happened is that there I was initially. I was the only girl in a class of, well, there are 3 classes together. I know you guys have 3 classes in each grade. We had 3 classes in each grade. And I started off as the only girl among 100 boys. And I went to the school not just to take physics. I transferred my entire schooling to to a school with all boys. And then subsequently, because I raised my hand, here is what happened. Then other girls began to get on the bus, and then it became a physics bus. And it was not a bus for just boys and girls separately. Everyone now had access to all the opportunities. And what that taught me was the importance, as I said, of speaking up. And it introduced to me an opportunity that I then was able to pursue, continue my education to become and fulfill the dream that I had established for myself so long ago. Now, I want you to think of yourself as a treasure chest, because ultimately we're born with all of these characteristic traits, we're born with all of these gifts, we're born with all of these talents. And these are things that essentially we get messages from the media, toys, books. They tell us who we are. If you're a baby, you probably don't remember at 6 months how you felt or what you thought or who you believed yourself to be. But a lot of the messages about who you are comes from the world around you. It comes from the people around you. And those messages could be one of several. They could be positive messages. You're outgoing, you're curious, you're smart. Or they could be very negative messages. You're lazy, you're annoying, you're bossy. And so when we think of ourselves as a treasure chest, where you were born uniquely designed with this amazing set of gifts and talents, then you have to be very conscious about what are the messages that are being put into that treasure chest as you essentially find yourself and you come into that knowledge of who you are and what you're unlimited in. And when you come into that understanding of who you are, then what follows is what you believe. Do you believe that you're special, that you're smart, that you're confident, that you're a problem solver, that you're courageous, joyful, athletic, all of those positive things that have been put into your treasure chest that you were already born with and then people are putting into, are those the things that you believe about yourself? And if those are the things that you believe about yourself, it then factors into what do you care about. Because if you believe that you're smart and you're a problem solver, then you begin to think about why are you here? What is your purpose? What were you designed to do? What are all of these things and all of these valuable things that have been put into your treasure chest? What are they meant for? Are they just meant to, have for show, or are they actually meant to make a difference in the world? And so as you go from what you believe to what you care about, we then all of these types of helping others, climate change or planet warming, teaching, helping others be more positive. These all become the characteristics of your why, understanding why are you here. And then once you move on from your why, it then helps you to know what are you going to do? What action are you going to take? So once I realized what my why was, which is that I wanted to care about people, then the next step was, what was I going to do about that? I raised my hand, and then I went on to be a doctor, a surgeon, an author, and so on and so forth. And so for that cycle of coming to what is internally a part of you, what are you good at, what are you really valuable, what do you offer that's really valuable, to how does that affect what you believe, to then how does that affect what you care about, what you act on, and then that brings you right back to who are you and what does your unlimited represent. And so my journey, once I had completed my residency and my medical school, one of the things that became very clear to me is that we have so many negative messages that are communicated to us, and many times those are things that people are trying to put into our treasure chest. And so I then developed what I call these habits of positivity and habits of positivity filter. And what that means is that whenever there is someone trying to put something into your treasure chest, I will subject it to a number of questions. Is it something that is going to be a solution to something else? If it is not, is it something that's positive or negative? Is it something that's a limit that you can convert into an opportunity? Is it something that's aligned with your purpose, and is it something for which you can be thankful? And if it is not something that is positive or aligned with your purpose, then let's put it in the trash. If it is something that is not representative of who you are, let's filter it out and put it in the trash. If it is something that is positive, that represents who you are, one of your character traits that will help you to make a difference in the world, then let's put it in your treasure chest. If it is something that continues to just represent who you are and all the positives about you, you put this in your treasure chest. And so over time, what will happen is that you become much more discerning about what you allow people to put into your treasure chest. You become much more mindful about the negatives and the positives, about the things that you hold on to compared to the things that you let go of. And in that process, I began to understand that one of the things that was in my treasure chest is that I'm very creative, I love to write, and I love to think about learning not only as something in a silo, but as something that is very integrated. And we spoke about that earlier, where part of your learning ecosystem here is how do you connect not only the academics of what you're learning, wanting to become lifelong learners, but also building your character and working in community. And as I began to observe more and more and be exposed to more and more kids, more and more girls, kids of color especially, who had been denied or limited because of a perception of what they were capable of, because of a belief system that said girls are not supposed to do something, boys are not supposed to do something, kids of color are not supposed to have access to certain things. I then wanted to be able to create a narrative, to create a way of empowering and encouraging kids to really live from this treasure chest without any limits and learn how to filter out the negative types of communications and negative types of messages that would potentially derail them from what their destiny is. And in so doing, I decided to use that gift of storytelling to create a platform that communicates all of the things that we talked about, which is how can you approach life from a perspective of positivity? How can you live your life from this unlimited perspective? How can you make a choice to choose positive over negative? How can you actually know that you are here for a purpose, and that is designed and that is intimately related to caring for others? We're not here for just selfish pursuits. It's not just all about us. We're actually here as part of something bigger. And so how do we make sure that we make our stamp in the world so that we can make a difference in the world in which we live? And so for me, creating an opportunity to do that, to all of the things that I cared about, to be able to bring that into some type of platform that motivated, encouraged, and created an opportunity for all kids to see themselves as powerful, and all kids to be really dedicated to doing something that can make a difference. And as a result, this is Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo, super surgeon on the go. And Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo was born out of, what do I know? And what I know, she's born out of the fabric of my stories, the experiences that I've had, the things that I've encountered that I feel, you know what? It actually will help other kids to be able to live this type of life where they're exposed to a thinking that empowers them, that makes them think positively, and at the same time, teaches them about things related to science, that engages them in a thought process that's about solving problems. Because when we think about science, it is all around us. Everything that we do, even every breath that we take, there's some type of scientific principle involved. And so how do I demystify that? How do I make it such that kids actually really enjoy relating to science, feel a connection to it, and actually want to use it to solve problems? Now, who is Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo? Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo, I think, is very much like many of you. And what I want you to pay attention to when we look at the characteristics of Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo, who is kind and caring and smart and insightful and persistent and powerful and confident. She's a problem solver, she's a leader, she's a team player, she's loving, she's humble, courageous, thoughtful. One of the things that I hope that you notice about who is Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo is that none of these things reference anything external. They are all the core of the inside of who she is, of who you are. And so when you think about yourself and you think about that treasure chest, it is what are you on the inside and what are the connectors that connect us all, because when you strip away all of the external definers, that we are, as a whole, we are on the inside more similar than we are different. And consequently, because of who she is on the inside, Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo's power, as does your power, comes from the inside of who you are. And Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo tapped into these powers of positivity, because ultimately, there's a saying that says, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. And so remember that in our treasure chest, what lives in that treasure chest is our unlimited, and in our heart, the ability to choose in an unlimited way what our attitude is. And so Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo's powers of positivity are defined by these 5 principles. Number 1, there is always a solution. You just have to work to find it. So nothing happens without hard work. There's a discipline, there's a hard work, there's a rigor that you cannot avoid. Shortcuts, we live in a world where we've had all these microwave, fast food, drive-through opportunities, but really and truly, there's still the element of hard work that just takes time. And that's something that Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo's powers of positivity is based on. And your powers come from there. The second principle of positivity is really understanding that any challenge that you encounter, there is an opportunity to turn it into something that's going to serve you, that's going to empower you, that's going to create more resources, that any negative and positive things that happen to you, the negative allows you a chance to look at it, turn it upside down, learn from it, but then you get to put it aside and you keep the positive as a way of encouraging yourself. And then each and every one of you specifically is designed in a way that was uniquely gifted to do something that is in this world that will bless others in a way that no one else can do. And so each of you has that specific purpose for which you were created. And then living from this place of gratitude where we're always looking at what can we be thankful for. And because Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo has these powers of positivity, I use that to create this superhero element of how can she use these powers to really change the world. And here is the Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo book series. And today, I'm going to be reading you a little bit of the ice storm intervention, because we all know that climate change is real and it's a huge problem. What I want for you to be invested in, to be committed to, is to really understand your opportunities as the problem solvers of the next generation. And how can you find creative ways of communicating what the goals, what the objectives are, how can you find ways of making a difference that is innovative, that is outside of the box, that brings a new and different perspective and a new and different way of thinking. And that's what I've done with the Dr. Dee Dee Dynamo book series. And so, ice storm intervention is a very interesting story. I'm originally, as you saw, from the Guyana and Barbados, and one of the things that I like least is being cold. I grew up in 80-degree weather, going to the beach every day, and when I decided that I would write and try to address climate change in a way that brought it an exciting, understandable, relatable way for kids, that I created an adventure out of it so that kids could really interact and engage with it from very, very early on, what I realized is that there is a little creature in the glaciers in Alaska called the ice worm that was being affected by climate change and by the warming temperatures. And sometimes if you want to pique people's interest, if you give them some kind of little known fact, something that's really intriguing, it captures their attention. And when I write, that's one of the things that I try to do, is to find that little piece of information that very few people know. How many people have ever heard of ice worms? Okay, some of you. So yeah, so the majority of you had not heard of ice worms. And so what I discovered about these ice worms is that there's a festival in this small town in Alaska called Cordova. And they celebrate the ice worms every year for the last 80 years. And the reason that they started the festival is because they have a very long winter. There's some days that it's 24 hours of darkness. And so they wanted to find a way to bring an element of fun, light, and laughter into the month of February. They decided, well, let's have a big party and let's have this festival that celebrates the ice worm. So I decided that I was going to write this book on this ice worm. And here is the logo for the Ice Worm Festival. So I needed to get permission from the Ice Worm Festival folks to be able to use the logo in my book. And when they gave me permission, they asked me to send a copy of the book when it was done, which I did. And then they said, oh my goodness, we really love these books. Would you consider coming to the Ice Worm Festival? What did you guys think I said?
Yes.
Oh, you were so positive. I love you. Have already internalized the powers of positivity. Well, that was not my first response. My first response was Alaska in February? That sounds dreadful. And so I really was not that enthusiastic initially. But then I had to, and that's the thing about the habits of positivity, you have to practice it every day. You just don't say, okay, I'm going to be positive, and then it just happens. You have to keep practicing. So then I had to take a deep breath, and I had to go to my powers of positivity, my habits of positivity, and I had to tell myself, you know what, you're going to be okay. It's going to be a new opportunity. This is an amazing opportunity. Can you imagine if in your imagination, when we talked about your mind being unlimited, that you can dream up something, that you could think about something, that you can write about it, and then to have the opportunity to actually experience it? I mean, like, that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And so I said I could not possibly pass that up. But it shows the power of your imagination. I mean, you even think about people walking on the moon, that someone had to think about that before it even existed and believe that it was possible in order to follow that path, to actually pursue the dream, to then bring it to fruition. So off I went to the Ice Worm Festival. And it was the most amazing experience. It opened my eyes to so many different ways of living, ways of thinking, and really and truly what I learned, and what is something that I've learned over and over and over again, that you just have to be prepared. So I had battery-operated socks, I had battery-operated gloves, I had 10 layers, and it was an experience that I was so thankful that I did not dismiss it, because I had this sort of limited mindset about what I thought I could do. I never thought I could actually walk on a glacier in below zero weather and enjoy it and be so mesmerized by the amazing just vista, and just to have that incredible experience of being in a place where there were these little tiny ice worms that very few people knew about, that lived in the ice, that were being affected by climate change. So typically, the way that the Dr. Dee Dynamo books work is that, and much of this is about our life, and when we think about how do we solve problems. There's first the problem, and she has a team that they basically She has a team that essentially goes around she has a team that helps her. So very few of us can be successful without working with some type of a team. So Dr. Dee Dynamo has this team. There's her globe that usually sounds the alarm. And they went off to Cordova to visit this family during the Ice Worm Festival. And they heard this alarm coming from the ice worms. And I'm going to just read a couple of the pages for you. And Gordon the Globe, who is sounding the alarm, and says, "Wahoo, wahoo, wahoo! What is it, Gordon?" she asks. "The ice worms are very upset because their home is becoming too warm and they will die," he says. Kyle the koala bear, who is her very grumpy assistant and the naysayer, he's the person in your life who will say, "You can't, you can't, you can't, you can't." He says, "How do you know?" And Marky Medicine Bag carries off her too, says, "Well, maybe he heard them crying." Now, Toby, who is a kid with autism who is the son of one of their friends who lives in Alaska, who never speaks, but he has this ability and knows everything about climate change and only speaks when he's speaking about something related to climate change. And he says, ice worms don't make noises. And then he tells them about the ice worms. The ice worms are discovered in Alaska in 1887. They look like miniature ice worms, earthworms. They only live in the glacier. They melt and die at temperatures above 40 degrees. They feed on pollen grains that live in the ice, and they actually move by tunneling through the ice. And so this became the opportunity. When you have a problem, you identify the problem, and then what are the contributors to the problem? So this then really explores, and some of you will get the book, so I'll let you read that on your own because I know we're running out of time, but this really deconstructs the science around the climate change. What is climate change anyway? Why is the earth warming? What is the greenhouse effect? And then we move on to what are the effects of climate change. And so this reviews all of the things that our Earth is being exposed to and experiencing because the temperatures are warming. And you would think that, oh, it would just be a situation where things are just getting too hot, which means things are melting. But you see this huge shifts from one place to the other of extremes of temperature and the effects on the animals and the extinction of animals that will occur because the climate is changing. And so Dr. Didi Dynamo always has a surgical solution that is somehow integrated into the science of it all. And so she jets off to the glacier, she does her magic, and this is me on the glaciers, as I said, something that I never thought that I could do, but here we are with a friend, and here are it's just amazing to see that these are the icebergs. The whole glacier lake is frozen. During the summer, it's water, but these are the icebergs that float in the lake during the summer and then are stationary in the winter. And they literally look like this blue, like sea blue almost. It's incredibly beautiful. And so Dr. Didi decides that, okay, part of the issue with climate change is because there's this increase in CO2 in the atmosphere. And is there a way that we can filter the CO2 out of the atmosphere? So using a way in order to really come up with a solution and just being creative and innovative. And so they come up with a solution, she sets it up, and everyone is really happy. And that's a rush through, you'll be able to read the book. And so she solves the problem by believing that it is possible. And so what I want to leave you with today, if one thing that you remember, which is that you are a treasure chest, and that in that chest lives your you. It is unlimited. You are unlimited because you have this unlimited heart and capacity to love. You have this unlimited ability to choose your attitude. You have this unlimited mind that allows you to think unlimited thoughts, that allows you to believe unlimited thoughts, and allows you to dream in an unlimited way. And if you apply these 5 habits of positivity to your treasure chest, meaning that you allow those habits to filter out any of the negativity that prevents you from really coming into all of the things that you're destined to achieve, then you will ultimately be extremely successful, because really our success is based on how do we create and make a difference in the world. And so today I am extremely privileged and honored and thankful to be able to have shared Dr. Didi Dynamo with you, to be able to have encouraged you to know that every one of you has this treasure inside, and that every one of you is meant to make an extreme difference in the world. And if you will just apply this unlimited way of thinking and just apply this understanding that your powers of positivity live and dwell within you, and you have the ability to choose every day, that you will continue to grow and fill your treasure chest, and you will ultimately make an amazing difference and impact in the world and on the world. Perfect. Okay, now, any questions? Any questions at all? Yes, sir.
How many, where do the ice worms live? Do they only live in those places?
Yes, they only live in the ice, and they only live on the 4 northern glacier ranges that go through Vancouver, Alaska, and northern part of Washington State, and those are the only places where ice worms are found. So that's a very good question. Very good question. So when I first started, my first book was called Mission to Pluto, and I love Mission to, every book I've loved, but Mission to Pluto, Pluto was really sad that it had been downgraded to a dwarf planet. And so Dr. Didi was on the job of trying to really help Pluto to figure this out. But basically it took me about 7 years to really develop the character. So when you write and you think and you use your imagination, you literally are building a world. You're building a family, you're building a person, you're building an entire being. And so you have to think about all of the aspects of who is that person going to be. What are they going to be like? What are their family going to be like? What's their world going to be like? And so it took me about 6 or 7 years to really construct that world. And then once I constructed her world, and when you write, one of the things that you will find is that you become a part of, the character becomes a part of you. Like I can literally hear the characters speaking, and I can hear their conversations. And so it took me about 1 year to write the first book, Mission to Pluto. And then the other books take me probably about 6 months to write the books, but then I do all the graphics and the visioning for the illustration, so then I work with my illustrator to bring it to life and go through that process of all the other components of writing. So really about now, I would say about 6 months to kind of get the book in its entirety before we do all the other illustrations.
Yeah.
So after you did the physics class, did you end up taking like physics like a lot, and when you were a doctor, did you do a lot of physics?
Absolutely. So I went to Johns Hopkins University and I was a biophysics major, and biophysicists do things related to all of the, gadgetry and machinery and how our bodies work based on lots of electrical impulses, so the physics of that. And so I'm a urologist, which means I'm a urologic surgeon. I operate on the kidneys, the bladder, and the prostate, and all the affiliated parts. And one of the things as a urologist that I do is I use a lot of equipment. So I use a lot of telescopes, and I use a lot of the robots. And so we have a lot of technical things that we do that requires an understanding of physics and the applications of biophysics. So I still use that in my everyday life.
What inspired you to write children's books?
Well, I kind of felt like, okay, I put on my doctor hat. And what I realized is that we were facing like this multiple problems, right? One with which I bumped into as a girl, which is, there were not a lot of women in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math fields. And we had this limited mindset about, there are not a lot of women CEOs, and we don't have a woman president. And, there are a lot of places, it started off for me about where girls seem to be limited. And so I said to myself, well, is the issue that we don't see, women and girls showing up in these places, is that the root cause, or are those just the symptoms? And what I decided that those are symptoms of an underlying problem. And the underlying problem is that we're raising our kids to have these very limited perceptions. So all we're doing is just passing down negative belief systems. And so if I wanted to change the belief systems, in other words, Dr. Didi Dynamo is just not for girls. She's for everyone, because as I said, when we strip away the external, what you realize is that on the inside, all of those characteristics and character traits that help us to make a difference in the world, they all live on the inside. And so if I could get boys and girls, black, brown, white, orange, non-gender conforming, if I could get all of the children to begin to think of their lives through these habits of positivity, through this understanding of our values that we share, we all belong in the same spaces, we all bring equal value, so that when boys see a powerful girl, superhero, and they connect to the science of it, what they're actually understanding is that girls are just as capable, that they bring value into settings, that they can do any number of things. And so when those boys become CEOs of companies alongside girls, they become CEOs of companies, and women find themselves in science, technology, engineering, and math fields, they don't have this male type of kind of perspective that says we don't belong here. So we begin to create an understanding where we can all live together, valuing each other, and we have to start that by the messages that we actually communicate to our kids. So that's the reason I started with kids' books, is because it really depends on making sure we're training our kids to think in a particular way. Let's see in the back. middle, back, yep.
Was your brother like annoyed that you were switching to his school?
That's a really good question. You know, it's so funny. So we were both teenage. I mean, I was 13 when I went into his class, and he wasn't really annoyed, but he said, look, you know, you got to take care of yourself. I mean, you know, you're in this class with all boys, and I am not going to be your protector. I know that you can take care of yourself. And so he really, I mean, he did not, and it was good for me because I didn't have a crutch. He didn't kind of designate himself my protector. He said, you can do this. My parents said, you can do this. And that's where I understood that they had put these things in my treasure chest that I actually discovered about myself. I found out things about myself in going to that all-boys school that I didn't even know that I had. I didn't know that I could be bold. I didn't know that, you know, I could be resilient. I didn't know that people could say things to me that could seem hurtful, but I could develop a tough skin that I wouldn't take it personally. So I developed a lot of things, and I found out a lot of things about myself during that time. Yes. Yes.
So, were any of the boys like discriminated?
Were any of them?
Did they try to like stop you from getting on the bus or like?
No. So this is the interesting thing as we talked about, right? Because they had never even thought about it. So no one had actually thought, oh wow, a girl would want to do this. So everyone was, I don't think it was, they never deliberately said you can't do it. But then once it was introduced, they thought, oh, wow, okay, this is weird, we're doing something new. And they got to be a part of something new. And when you're a part of doing something new where you realize that you're a trailblazing class, that you're making a difference, that you're beginning to set a completely different way of doing things, there's something about it that makes you feel really good. And so they actually felt really good. And you know, we had our challenges, but they got to understand, I think, my perspective, and I got to understand their perspective, and it was a very, very healthy experience. Yes, young lady, all the way back.
One more question.
A long time ago, like you started to
Can you speak up a little more loudly?
how long ago was when you decided to make those?
So I published the first book 6 years ago, and it took me about 6 years to get to the first book. So it was about 12 years ago that I first had the thought, oh, I am going to create this character and write those books. And that's a whole other story in terms of how that came about. Remember I told you, like, I have this bolt, I'm a bolt of fabric with so many stories, but you know what, another time I'll be able to tell you that story.
All right, guys, you were a great audience. Thank you so much. Why don't we thank Dr. Williams?